Welcome back to another episode of JT Talks Jobs. This is the show that teaches you everything that school didn't about job search and career growth. I was supposed to have Stacy Lewis back. We've been doing a monthly series with Stacy on diversity. Unfortunately, she's feeling a little under the weather, so we've moved that to next week and instead moved up the session that I'm doing today, all about building your presence online in a crisis. This is a topic that has come up a lot lately amongst job seekers. We have a lot of people out there out of work trying to figure out how to build their presence online. But even people who are currently employed are saying, this has really woken me up to the idea that every job is temporary and that I have to be thinking about my reputation, also known as your personal brand, or executive presence. That's another term that it's called. So we're going to talk about that today and how you deal with that online. I'm going to walk you through the things that I teach my members of Work It Daily when it comes to that. So before we get started, I just want to tell you all, next week, next Thursday, August 27th, I'm going to be hosting an executive presence summit. So if you like what you hear today and you'd really like an intensive training class on how to take your presence to the next level, how to really build your reputation, this would be the class for you. And I only teach this to my members inside the Work It Daily platform. This is the very first time we've ever taken this course and brought it out and made it available to the public. So it's going to be quite exclusive, 4.5-hour intensive training. And here's the thing, classes like this would normally cost you about $500, sometimes more. We're doing this training for $99. We really want people to have access to it and get this information. If you can't attend live, we'll send you the recording. So that's another big feature that you'll be able to have. Again, it's only $99. We're limiting the amount of people that can attend this particular class because it is quite hands-on and there'll be a lot of discussion. So again, check out the link if you want to attend executive presence training, 4.5-hour intensive, my very first time ever bringing this training outside from behind the walls of Work It Daily to work with the general public. So check that out for sure. We've got the link, okay? All right, then we are going to get started. Let me bring up my presentation. So first thing that you need to think about, because we're talking about online reputation, online presence in this pandemic, in this crisis. And, this really started to take effect deeply back in March. Fast forward to now, and people are tired of being afraid. They are. They're exhausted. And they wake up every day and things really haven't changed. It's still the same. They're tired of the drama. They're tired of being afraid. And I bet a lot of you feel this way. I know I got there probably quicker than most because I just don't like feeling afraid. I'm one of those people that when I feel afraid, I go seek answers. I go seek knowledge. I don't want to sit in the fear. I'd rather push through and figure it out. And I bet a lot of you are like me. But there's millions upon millions of other people that are just sitting out there tired and saying enough is enough. But you know what? Those people also don't have the energy or the mindset to create a vision for their future. So the truth is that even though they're tired of being afraid, their brain is exhausted, maybe they're physically exhausted, and it's hard to imagine a better future. It's hard to imagine what things are going to look like when they get better. And they are going to get better, folks. This isn't going to last forever. This is temporary. Everything's temporary. This is going to evolve. We're going to figure things out and we're going to move on. So it's not going to stay. This isn't the status quo forever. But for many, many people, it's very difficult right now to see the positive and to build that vision. And the reason I want you to think about that for a moment is because they need information and insights. The only way they're going to get out of their funk is if they can think in new ways. So this is common for all of us, right? Any human being. When we're in a funk, when we're depressed, when we're feeling like there's no way to get out of the situation, it's because we need new information, new ideas, new thoughts, new feelings to help us see and open doors and go in new directions. This is just basic, one-on-one of how to get out of that kind of feeling. But in the case of this, when it comes to work and it comes to career, a lot of people just don't know where to get that information or those insights. They just go through their daily routine, continuing to consume the same things, continuing to feel bad about the situation, continuing to feel helpless. And so they really need the information and the insights to shake things up, which means opportunity is knocking for you. So if you, for whatever reason, decide to come to this session today, there's a reason. It's the universe telling you that. This means that you are ready to consider the opportunities that you could take advantage of right now when it comes to giving people the information and the insights they need to think in new ways. And I want you to think about how important that is, because if you are the person that's out there getting your industry, your skill sets, the people in your careers or professions thinking in new ways, they're going to remember you for that. And this is the secret to building a reputation, particularly online. If you've ever wondered, how has somebody gotten to a place where they have a lot of followers, for example, or how about you just know somebody who seems to always attract the best opportunities and land the best job offers? Those people are very strategic at going out and driving conversation that gets people thinking. And by being the person that initiates those meaningful conversations, they elevate their stature. They become, by default, seen as a thought leader, because if they were smart enough to start these conversations, then they must be someone who knows what they're talking about. Do you see what I'm saying here? And, don't just take my word for it. There are studies that show this, that when we start to focus in on a subject or an idea and we start to get people talking, we get perceived as being a thought leader in that space, that we have knowledge in that we're a specialist of some kind. And when we get seen as a specialist, when we can brand ourselves as somebody who's very focused on solving a particular type of problem, what happens is by default, people see us as more intelligent and then think, well, if you're good at that, you can be good at other things. And this is how all those people that you see that have this presence, how they get their amazing opportunities to come to them. That's how it works. It's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. This is basic. So the opportunity is knocking. Any single person that's watching this session today, you have the opportunity to be an influencer in the thoughts of others. You have the chance now to give people what they need so that they can start to feel better, and they will not forget that. And that's the kind of positivity you want to be associated with in your career. So there are 4 steps to building your reputation, especially online. And this is all based on something called the G.L.O.W method. Now, the G.L.O.W method is something that I developed many years ago when I started my practice. When I became a career coach back in 2001, I needed a way to help clients understand that we could achieve any goal that they set out to if we followed 4 basic steps. And I love G.L.O.W because I just feel like, when you glow, it's a positive energy. You're just kind of putting it out there, and people are attracted to that, like a moth to a flame. So step 1 is gaining perspective. Step 2 is illuminating the actual goal that we're trying to achieve. Step 3 is owning your actions. And step 4 is work it daily. And it shouldn't surprise you, what is the name of our company? Work it daily, because that is the most critical of the 4 steps. It's actually not the hardest, but it's the most critical, and the one that people tend to not do enough. So we're going to get to that in a minute. So today we're going to apply the G.L.O.W method to this idea of building your online reputation in a crisis, in a pandemic. So let's start with gaining perspective. First step in the process. When you want to have online presence, first you have to ask yourself, you have to do a little digging, a little self-reflection. And these are 4 questions that I would have you ask yourself right now. Number 1 is, what's the biggest problem your industry is facing right now as a result of the crisis? So you need to step back and ponder that. And I'm sure you've got some ideas around this. I'm sure you've been trying to stay on top of it yourself, but what are the problems that your industry is facing? Second, what skills are most in demand in your field right now? What is becoming evident right now that are vital skill sets that are needed in these times of change? The third one, what are the biggest shifts that have occurred in the way your industry works in the new normal with social distancing? So we're seeing so many businesses now create their new normal, right? Their new procedures, those sorts of things. How has your industry shifted in that respect? And then lastly, where are the opportunities? Where do you see the opportunities for your industry or your profession to evolve and grow as a result of the crisis? Because I'm sure you've been thinking about this. All of you on this call today are smart, intelligent human beings. You've been pondering these 4 questions, whether you realize it or not. Now, the reason that I want you to ponder those and write out your answers, almost if you were writing an article, is that this is the content that you're going to use to come up with a strategy to drive discussions with people and build that presence. These are the topics that are going to resonate with people right now. And that's a very important part of being successful in this, gaining perspective around what matters to people right now. Because if it matters to you and you have thoughts on it, it matters to others. And having a conversation around that is how you bond through commonality. So you have to do this first step. You have to gain perspective on the situation and on yourself in order to execute. So the second step in the process is actually illuminating the goal. What are we trying to achieve? So in this case, we come down to who, what, where, when, and how. What you have to map out is who are the people that you should be talking about on these topics. So those questions that I asked, those topics of discussion, who in your industry, in your career, are the people that you would want to be having these conversations with and why? Who are those folks? What's the best way to have these discussions with them right now? A lot of us can't go to in-person networking events anymore. So what can you do to facilitate these discussions? Should you be hosting an online event? Is it a matter of posting a question or a poll on social media? There are different things that you can do in order to drive these discussions, even in a pandemic. Where's the best place to initiate these discussions? So this is taking it a little bit further and saying, do I need to email people? Do I need to message them on LinkedIn or some other social media platform that your industry uses? How am I going to start these conversations and facilitate them? When's a good time to have them? Is there a time of day, a day of the week, a time of the month? Even, from a standpoint of the year, is there certain things that happen seasonally in your industry that make these conversations more timely? Those are all things that you want to consider. And then lastly, how many people should be included? Should you only be doing one-on-one conversations with people? Should you be doing one-to-many, meaning putting it out there for the universe to take in? Should you be hosting small talk groups? I'll give you a great example. I know somebody right now that is once a month reaching out to, about 10 people in her industry and saying, I want to get together and have a chat, a discussion on a very specific topic, kind of like a book club, but it's a topic related to their business. And they all come from a little bit different backgrounds. And the whole point is every time she brings 10 different people together so that they can network and meet one another. She's become a total super connector. And it's different every month. And by doing that, she's introducing these people to one another, and they're all recognizing her as a thought leader in this space. And all she's doing is using her Zoom and inviting 10 people and hosting a virtual call for 45 minutes. Easy enough to do, right? So that's all the different things that you want to be thinking about. Sorry, team. Third thing is to own your actions. So here's the thing. You can't build your online presence if you don't do the basics. Basic number 1 is optimizing your LinkedIn profile. Do you have a LinkedIn profile where the headline is optimized? Are you sure that all your settings are public so people can find you? Is your about section properly optimized? Is your work history fully filled out? These are the things that need to be in place because people aren't going to take you seriously if your profile isn't done right. Secondly, do you have a bucket list of companies and influencers? Salespeople always have territories and they always have a target list. Sometimes they call them a bullseye list of ideal clients. Well, you need a bucket list. Who do you want to be talking to in the earlier slide? Well, you have to create a bucket list of employers where the people that work there would be the kind of people you'd want to talk to, right? It can be a list of companies you'd like to work for someday. And influencers, who are the thought leaders in your space that you would love to have a conversation with you on these various subjects, because you're going to need those people to execute your strategy. All right, so you need a list so you know who you're targeting when it comes to your networking and your content. And then lastly, you have to join online groups related. So thanks to LinkedIn, which gosh, just a little over a decade ago, we didn't even have it. Now there are all sorts of groups that you can join here on LinkedIn where they're similar to industry, skill set, even location, geography. And that's a great place for you to be dialed in and kick off these discussions that you want to have, right? So essentially what we're doing is making sure that our profile, which is like our website for our business of one, your service provider, your business of one, your website's in good shape. And then that you've gotten a list or an idea of where you want your presence to have the greatest impact. And then, of course, you've figured out these groups that you can be a part of to help elevate that, right? These are just the basics. Now, once you have that, you come to the most important part, the work it daily part, the part that I mention all the time. So you have to schedule high payoff activities, just like brushing your teeth, right? Working out, anything you care about in life. For something to be healthy and strong, you have to work it daily. It has to be a habit. And so I advise my clients to at least once a day post content. It can be their own content. It can be content from somebody else that they've curated, right? That's focused in. Remember those questions that I said earlier that supports those discussion topics? You focus on high traffic times. So there are certain times of the day where people are on social media, especially LinkedIn more frequently, 6 a.m., 12 p.m., 6 p.m., breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Shouldn't surprise you, right? You should be actively commenting, liking, and sharing other people's work, because by doing that, first of all, LinkedIn rewards you for being an active participant, but also that's how you get visibility on your own platform, on your own concepts. You should be reaching out to 5 people via direct messaging that you haven't talked to in a while. So you should always be nurturing your network by reaching out to them and asking those questions and saying, what do you think? And trying to drive a one-on-one discussion. And you should be trying to get 5 new people a day to connect with you, going back to that bucket list, that target list, those industry groups, people that are thought leaders, people that you've seen posting interesting content that, you know, if you saw them at an actual event, you'd want to have a conversation with them. You should be customizing connection requests and asking them. If you were to do these 5 things on a consistent basis, Monday through Friday, using the ideas in this layout, you would be amazed at what happens. It all comes down to the consistency. When you drive the conversations in a consistent fashion, it doesn't happen in the first day, probably not in the first week, but when you stick with it, and most people give up too soon, when you stick with it, all of a sudden something clicks. And we know this because all the people that have done research in sales know that it can take 9 to 17 times on average for a person to see an advertisement, for them to finally make a connection with the brand and pay attention enough to it to get a sense of what the brand does and what it's about. 9 to 17 times. You're a brand. You're a business of one. So for you to get people to recognize and associate with what you do for work and what you're a thought leader in, they're going to need to see something from you 9 to 17 times. Now, if you're posting just once a day, 5 days a week, the likelihood they're not going to see all 5 of those things. They might see 1, they might see 2. Depends on how often they go into LinkedIn. So if you were lucky enough to get somebody to see something once a week of yours, that means it's probably going to take a minimum of 9 weeks, a little over 2 months before they associate with you. And it might take 4 months. So that's why I'm saying this has to become very routine for you. And it doesn't take a lot of time, folks. Once you build up the skills and you know what to do, you're not talking about a lot of time every day, but it adds up. And all of a sudden the dividends are there. People ask all the time, JT, how did you end up a thought leader on LinkedIn? By doing exactly this. By doing exactly this. I was consistent. I stuck with it. I shared knowledge. I drove meaningful discussions. And fast forward to today, and it's much easier for me now. I don't have to do nearly the amount of work. I do it anyways because I love it. I love serving my network. I love helping them. I love passing insights on to them. It's part of who I am. But I wouldn't have to work nearly as hard as I did on the front end, which wasn't even that hard. Once I made it a routine, I didn't really think about it. 15, 30 minutes a day. That was it. But I found that I enjoyed it so much and I was getting so many interesting conversations going and so many interesting opportunities coming my way. I didn't want to stop because it became inbound. And all of you listening today have this same capacity. All right. So I'm going to stop there because I want to be able to take a bunch of questions about this today. Look, folks, I just gave you the 30,000 foot view of how you build your online presence in a crisis, how you drive conversations in a crisis that are going to lead to credibility and trust. But if you would love to learn all the things involved in this, really dive deeper than the 30,000 foot view, it takes more than 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I can deliver the concepts to you overarching. But if you really want the detailed blueprint of how to do this and what it looks like and how it all pulls together, then you should come to my summit. It's going to be August 27th, 4.5 hours. I know they're putting the links in here for you. Only $99. If you can't attend live, $99, you will get the recording and the PDFs and the workbook, all of it. So if you've been looking for a class like this and you've really wanted to understand how to begin building your presence, this is it. And I've never done this before. I can tell you that right now, first time ever. This has always been exclusive inside the Work It Daily platform and only for my executive members. So this is a really, really great time if you're looking to get this information and launch your presence online, build your presence, have more opportunities come to you instead of you having to go seek them, then this would be the class for you. Okay? All right. So I know my team is sharing that with you now. So what we're going to do is take some questions. Very excited to do that. So first question is from Improv Wendy. Hey, Wendy, how do I build an online reputation on LinkedIn when I am not clear of what industry to target? I have my hands in 5 industries. Oh, that's a great question, Wendy. Thank you for asking it. So Wendy, my guess is, I'm going to make an assumption here, that the skill set that you use, the problem that you solve, the pain that you alleviate is similar across all 5 industries. So the emphasis on your brand should be on that. Because if it's similar across all 5, then as you promote in 5 different industry groups on LinkedIn, or as you're hashtagging on LinkedIn, which is one of the techniques we'll teach you next week in the summit, you'll get in front of those various audiences and the content will resonate because you're focused on the problem and the skill set as opposed to the industry. That's really the key there. And that's a wonderful way to do it, right? So for example, for me, I'm HR, recruiting, career coach. So that works across multiple industries, but I focus on the problems that everybody experiences in those industries because they're similar. I know they're similar because I've worked with them all. So that's what you need to focus on. Great question. Question over on LinkedIn is, could you tell me your opinion about network marketing, please? It is quite difficult to find normal jobs during this time. I think network marketing could be an alternative. What is your opinion? So my definition of network marketing is like multi-level marketing, where you're selling products or services in a group. And so it really depends on what you're doing. There are certain brands and certain companies where people have not really been successful. The model is not successful. And there have been others where people have been wildly successful. I think the most important thing is for you to do your due diligence on those organizations and be very careful about how much you have to invest in order to be able to participate, because some of them can be scams in that front. Not saying all of them. Some of them I think are fantastic. I'm not in a position to endorse any. But my most important thing is for you to do your homework, because if they're asking you to invest a lot of money and you find yourself putting more money in than out, now's not the time to do that. You'd be better off, candidly, learning how to do a side hustle. So finding some kind of skill that you could do part-time and do that on a freelance basis, because there are so many freelance sites right now where you can do project work. Or if you have a hobby and you've always wanted to sell something, maybe you make something. That would be another thing to do now, where the cost is going to be minimal, but the return is going to be better. Okay, so just be careful with the network marketing. Make sure that you're selecting a good one. All right, David over on YouTube is saying, how do you deal with people posting negative comments about your content? David, oh, you've come to the right place. Here's my personal rule of thumb on that, David. If somebody disagrees with you, and even they use strong language, but they are articulating a point on why they disagree, why they feel it's not right, then leave it, because this is healthy discussion. This is debate. So if it's debate, then thank them for being willing to share an alternative point of view. That's okay. But if it's snarky and it offers no value to the conversation other than just being rude, delete it. It has no place there. And we've come to a time now, there was a time where people used to say, well, no, you should leave everything up. No, if it provides no value, if it's rude and condescending and it's not making an alternative point, delete it. You can delete it and you should. Although I'll tell you, in the early phases of building your brand, you can delete. When you get larger with your brand, when you start to have hundreds of thousands of followers, you won't need to delete anymore because your fans will come to your rescue. They will support you and they will really put that person in their place. And I've been really blessed. Of course, I have people opposing points of view all the time, but purely snark, evil, mean people. It happens. I get it. And people really come to my defense now, which I love. But when I was smaller and I didn't have a lot of followers, they didn't. And so I would sit there and look at it and go, all right, is it contributing to the conversation or is it just mean? And if it's mean, delete it. Okay. I give you permission. Awesome. Let's see. Question on LinkedIn is, how do we settle down if we have multiple goals? Where to start? Okay. That is a huge question. So we did a survey a few years ago, 2017, so 3 years ago on Work It Daily, and we asked people, why don't they move forward? 47% of them said they don't know where to start. They've got these multiple goals. You have to pick a lane. So my advice is work with somebody to list out all the pros. I mean, obviously, if you've got multiple avenues, you're excited about multiple avenues, you've got to list out all the pros as to why you want to go after those avenues, as well as all the cons. I actually did that myself. So when I left corporate America and I decided I wanted to be a coach, I got certified in both business and wellness coaching. So business, career coaching, right? And wellness, more health, physical coaching. And I really struggled because at the end, they tell you you've got to pick one or the other. And I had been in business for a really long time. And this wellness thing was all new to me and really exciting. And I was drawn to it. And so I struggled for a little bit. Like, where do I go? Which direction do I want to go in? And I sat down and made this list. And what I found was there were so many more reasons for me to get into career coaching because of my background and my experience and my knowledge. I was going to be able to do more and be more effective and stand out more and get results faster. So I did that. But you know what I also did? You know what my side hustle is? It is coaching. I've been a fitness instructor for, let's see, 15 years. That's amazing, right? 15 years, more than 15 years. Oh, older. Doing the numbers in my head right now. And, I'm into that stuff and I have side stuff that I do around that. But my main hustle, my main focus, all of my branding here is on the thing that I decided was going to leverage my skills and abilities the best. And it was a really great decision. So you need to do that. You need to figure that out. You need to pick a lane. And it's not ever, you're never going to pursue those other things, but you got to take one across the finish line. You got to get one in a good place, and then you'll be in a position to do more with the others. Okay. Really, really great question, by the way. I love that. Okay. So hopefully this is making sense to everybody because online presence is a big deal, especially in a crisis. Standing out when 55 million people in the US alone have lost their jobs in 4 months. Standing out becomes important. I have not shown you anything that is rocket science or brain surgery today. I am showing you what consistent effort will get you. And it is worth it. I can tell you that right now. It is worth it. And you know what? Most people won't even do this. They're too preoccupied. But if you've stayed and listened through this, then you've got potential. And I'm telling you, once you get on the other side of this, once you've built your brand, you are going to be light years ahead of your competition. It's going to be hard for them to touch. It's really worth it. Arlene is asking, I'm now looking for a new career. I was in the event industry. How do I create a bucket list of places to work? Oh, Arlene, I love that question. So first of all, Arlene, don't get too hung up on a bucket list of actual employers. You're eventually going to want a bucket list of employers in your area, in your commutable area where you can do the work, or, maybe it's virtual. What you first have to do is just come up, your first pass is 10 companies that do things that really impress you. And I don't care where they are. I don't care where they're located. Stop thinking, oh, they'd never hire me. I don't have the skills. That's not the point of the first list. The first list is for you to just sit there and say, what 10 companies do something I admire? Not that you heard they're a great place to work, but their product or their service just gives you such a warm, fuzzy feeling. You love what they do. You get excited by their services and their products. Maybe you've used them. And this can be hard in the beginning for us to think about, folks, but go through your day and look at everything you use from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, and think about the things you have gratitude for. Think about those things you're like, oh, I love that. I really like that. And you make a list of companies, and then you step back and you say, what do these companies have in common? Because trust me, there'll be patterns. There's usually at least 2 patterns in the companies that you've chosen to be on your list. And that helps you start to identify what you're drawn to, the things that matter to you. And that's how you start to identify companies that you'd be interested in. And now what you do is you take a look at those patterns. Like maybe they're all luxury brands. Maybe they're all environmental companies. Maybe they all do things for kids or for dogs or for pets. It depends. Maybe they're all around food or lifestyle. You're going to see patterns. And then you say, all right, now I'm going to go look for all the companies that do this, because there's more than these companies. There's lots of companies that do these things. And that's how you start to narrow your search and start to figure out your brand, right? And then the magic sauce, so you know, Arlene, is when you connect your skills, your transferable skills from the events industry, the things that you are really good at, and how they would apply to those industries. And there's a whole technique you use for doing that, where you connect with people in those industries, you connect with people in those companies, and you start to learn from them so that you can connect the dots, okay? But you can do it. It's just a simple plan. Okay, another question here on LinkedIn is, employers are ghosting candidates. How often should we follow up with an employer without being a nuisance? Yeah, it is happening. So first of all, if you apply online and they don't respond back, that's not ghosting. And I know you know that, but I just wanted to clarify that for everybody else listed here today. If you have a phone screen with a company and they say they'll be in touch, they'll absolutely be in touch, and then they're not in touch, that would be technically ghosting. Right? Or you go on an interview and they say they're going to make their final decision the next couple of weeks and you'll hear from them. If they say you're going to hear from them and you don't hear from them, that's ghosting. But be careful. Sorry, guys, I'm really losing my voice. I spoke for 7 hours yesterday at our job search summit, so a little bit rough on the voice today. But if a company said to you, didn't specifically say they'd be in touch, then that's not ghosting. So you really have to think back on the conversation they had. Now, here's my advice. If you have a phone screen, at the end, you should say, can you tell me what the next steps are in the process? Anytime you interview folks, you say, can you tell me what the next steps in the process and when I might hear from you? And then they'll give you a date. You want to wait until that date. When that date passes, you can reach out and you can say, just wanted to follow up. In fact, don't use the word just. Say, I'm following up to be proactive and see if there's anything else I can do to further my candidacy. And by the way, the reason you don't use just is because it comes across, there's this sort of passive aggressiveness using that word that implies they did something wrong. So you say, I'm following up to be proactive and see if there's anything else I can do to further my candidacy. From the time that you do that, you wait 1 full business week to follow up again. If you hear absolutely nothing, a week later, you follow up and say, I wanted to see if you've made a final decision on the role yet. I'm going to assume, since I haven't heard from you, that you've probably found your next candidate. I want to thank you again for the opportunity. But if for some reason I'm still in the running, please let me know because I'm very interested in the job. So you go with the assumptive that they've probably already filled the position, but let them know if they haven't, you're still interested. Okay? After that, if you don't hear, you're done. No more. You let it go. It's that simple. They'll be in touch if they want to be. Okay? I know it's hard, but again, there's so much competition right now. And companies are so overwhelmed, they don't always do the right thing and follow up. So 2 times and you're done. You're moving on. Okay. Okay. Hey, Rocky. Rocky says, what if I'm limited to my geographic region? How do I focus online presence in this situation? Awesome question, Rocky. Awesome. So first of all, there are some local groups. You'll find local groups on social media that you should become a part of. And secondly, you should target, remember that list that I mentioned of companies and influencers in your geographic area? So you're going to want to do more due diligence on the companies in your area and the people that work there. And that's what you focus your networking on. And your goal is to try to get them to connect with you, because the more followers you have on LinkedIn in your geographic region, the better off you are. So you're going to hyper focus all of your networking, both your existing networking and your new networking, meaning acquiring new people, on local people. That way you'll fill that up. Now, what happens is when they see something that you post that they like and they like it and share it, it goes into their feed and they know a bunch of people locally. And that's how you spread the word locally, by concentrating your network in that area. Okay. Okay. Cherry and asks, I was able to find a hiring manager, 99% sure it's the right guy. I know I should write the cover letter addressed to him. However, I was able to obtain the hiring manager's email address. Do I email him directly? Is this ethical? Or send my application to the human resources recruitment team addressed to the hiring manager? Oh, that's a wonderful question. So here's the thing. I would send the letter to HR and recruiting, and I would say, dear hiring team, okay? And I would send the cover letter and the resume, both as PDFs. I would then email the hiring manager and say, I hope you don't mind, but I was able to track down that you're the hiring manager for this role. I just applied via your HR and recruiting team, but it was so important to me. I just wanted to share with you the story of why I'm such a fan of your organization. So attached is the cover letter that shares that story, as well as my resume. Okay. So by letting the hiring manager know that you have already applied with recruiting and HR, you followed the rules, but it's okay to reach out to them directly and say, I am just so excited. And I have such a story that I want to tell you about why I feel so connected, that I wanted to be proactive and reach out to you too. And that way you get it in both of their hands and you haven't upset anybody. Okay. Wonderful question. Question from LinkedIn. So we tweak the resume to make it appropriate for a particular job posting, correct? Can my LinkedIn profile remain more generic, or should it exactly match the resume? So your LinkedIn profile, your resume and LinkedIn profile should be identical in your work history. The work histories, the bullet points in the work histories of both of those tools should be identical. Don't change them. Okay. The resume gets changed in the top fold of the resume. So if you're a Work It Daily member, we teach ours a technique where the top of the resume, the first 6 seconds where they see it, that's the customizable part, and the rest of it all stays the same. It makes it easy to customize. And it's really the most important part, because when they open it up, that's the first impression. So you're going to customize there in the resume. As far as LinkedIn, that's going to stay more generic, because you should have your top 5 or 6 key skill sets in your headline, and your about section should be very basic. People make the mistake all the time of putting too much text and too customized in LinkedIn, and that's screening you out. So that part will be more basic, and then your work history will be identical. Okay. Another question. What are you hearing about the future of outside sales? Well, outside sales, just because you're not going physically face-to-face to people anymore, doesn't mean that outside sales won't exist. It still exists, and it's booming and will continue to thrive. People who are good at sales will know how to be good at sales virtually. They'll do virtual calls, whatever it takes. So I don't see outside sales going anywhere. I think outside sales is also known as independent sales, and it takes a person who's very driven and essentially runs sales like it's their own business. That's never going to go away. That's just going to get more and more popular. It's going to become bigger and bigger. All right, team. I don't know where the time goes. It always goes really fast. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I hope you found this concept of online presence in a crisis helpful. Again, I gave you the framework that I've used, that I've taught literally hundreds of executives inside our program to use. This is the strategy that, when done consistently, is going to get people coming to you. So be thinking about that, because every single person has the capacity to do this. There are no criteria other than a willingness to do this and putting the time in. And if you're interested in learning step-by-step what to do and working with a workbook and all the materials, check out the Executive Presence Summit that I'm doing next week. I promise you, it's going to be a total game changer, and I would love to work with you. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Another JT Talks Jobs in the books. Remember, if you want to win, you got to work it daily. Stay safe and stay healthy, and I'll see you next week.